Hello and welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast, episode 10. I'm here with, I'm Danny, and I'm here with Randy. Hi, Randy.
Hi, Danny.
We did that backwards.
Same time.
Mm-hmm. So today we're going to talk about,
Wait, did you say episode 10?
Episode 10.
You mean we're in the double digits now?
We are. We finally made it.
Heck yeah.
And it took a while. It took exactly as I thought. What? Hold on.
It took 10 weeks.
Exactly, yeah.
Almost as if we were doing an episode a week.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's almost like we planned something.
Right.
It's amazing. Anyway, so what's our episode title this week?
Are you on the right path?
Ooh.
How to live your best life. Ever.
With certainty. That's a good topic.
100% guaranteed, or your money back.
100% guaranteed. I think that's a good topic too, because I think a lot of us struggle with this. Am I doing what's right? That's the age-old question, right? Am I doing the right thing? Could I have done something differently? Could I have made it better? So, are we on the right path? What do we need to do? How do we figure this out?
Is there a wrong path?
That's another way to look at it, right? What do we mean when we say, am I on the right path? Let's start there, right?
Is my path better than everybody else's so I can rub it in their face?
That's the important thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
knowing that I'm better than the rest of the world.
Right, so I can post it on Facebook and Instagram and other people can know that my path is better than theirs.
That my life is better.
Yeah.
That's what's fucking important. Nothing else matters except showing everybody else that you're better. So, if that's our premise for what's right...
Step 1, know how to take a selfie.
That's important. Spend a lot of time, at least 50 pictures at a time.
Yeah, don't enjoy what you're doing. Just make sure you get good pictures of it.
What you're doing doesn't matter. It's just the picture that matters. Yeah. Anyway, though, in all seriousness, because we'll digress for now.
Yeah.
So what do you think of? I'm just saying, honestly, what do you think of when you think of that? What does it mean to be on the right path? What does that mean to you?
Well, for one thing, it is somewhat of, instead of going against life, it's kind of going with life. And I look at the analogy of being in a stream, and you can either paddle against the stream, or you can do nothing, or you can paddle with the stream. And I kind of look at living your ideal life as going with the current.
I like that, actually, because it means you're putting an effort, but your effort's rewarded by the current and actually enhanced by the current, right?
Yep.
So what you're doing is actually, essentially, right, it's strengthened and made, essentially faster and better and more profitable because of the current.
Yeah.
I like that idea, and actually what you said, it reminds me of Taoism and also Nietzsche, when you talk about, living your life in that way, not resisting your nature, who you are, right? Acting in a way that's in accord with it, so that what you do is right and makes sense, right?
Yeah. And another thing that I heard a while back was that sometimes you need to go against the current. You need to paddle against the current to be able to get into the current for you. And this is something that I kind of take in my life, because there are times where I'm not at the point where I want to be. Like, for instance, right now I have to work as a veterinarian. I'm not thrilled about it, but it's me paddling against the current for me to get to the ideal life where I want to be.
Oh, okay. So I see what you're saying. So you're suggesting, recognizing at times that you need to do certain things in order to live or to do the other things that you really want to do.
Yeah.
And ideally, doing that, or by doing that, it gives you the means to actually pursue those things you want, which hopefully will then become the main thing that you do, right?
Yep.
So in your case, right, the veterinarian thing, it's a means to an end. You are good at it, right? I know you don't hate all of the work or anything. But it's a way to get to where you want to be, right?
Yeah, it's like if you do what you have to do when you have to do it, eventually a day will come where you get to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
I like thinking about it that way, right? Because I think a lot of people, you get into a career or something like that, and you stop thinking about where you want to go, and you kind of, it's almost like, I wouldn't even call it contentedness, but you sort of just stop, right? It's like a passivity. And that's dangerous, because you're not doing anything else beyond that career that means to an end to live, right? Or to make your life the way you want it.
Yeah.
And so that could be really problematic, but I like the way you phrase it. You're using it as you're really using it as a tool in your life.
Yeah. So what do you think about when you're looking at, are you on the right path? How to get on the right path? How to live your best life ever.
My best.
Even in these trying times.
My best fucking life in these uncertain times. Hell yeah. I mean, I think of it I always go back to authenticity. I really think of it that way. I love the idea of the authentic life. And kind of like what you said, so, the Taoists have that concept of, the action of no action. Nietzsche talks about, like, living in such a way where you act such that, to act feels like acting on your instincts always. So it's like what you should be doing all the time, right? It almost feels like, and I kind of interpret that the non-action thing in Taoism can be interpreted a lot of ways. I kind of interpret it a similar way, right? Like, you're living in such a way that what you do is so you that it's almost as if you're not acting, right? It's almost as if it's natural, I guess is the right way to say it, right? That in your core, when you act, when you do things, that it is right because it is who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ideal, right? And I mean, I should point out that I by no means am living that right now. But I am trying, and I think that's the important point, right? So I think, for me, the right path is that direction.
Yeah.
Knowing that I'm trying to get in that direction, go in that direction, and experiencing it sometimes.
Yeah. And I really like your point there, because it is saying yes to what's right for you. I hear so many people, particularly people who are stuck in life at like dead-end jobs, bottom of the rung jobs, they always look at life with this victim mentality, and there's this life that they want, but they've convinced themselves 100% that it's not possible for them.
Yeah, they convince themselves, right, that they can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they just blame society, and they blame all these other things, where instead, if you just figure out the life that you want, and this doesn't have to be like the ultimate final life that you want, because I know when I get down, things look bleak, and I can't even figure out what I want in life, but I'm like, well, let's just try for right now, and then once I start pursuing that, then something else opens up, and usually by like the third iteration, I'm finally getting something that's kind of in the general direction of where I want to go.
No, and that's a great point, though, right? Because I think even people, sometimes when you hear authenticity or you hear the right path, the right life, they think of it as like a goal or an end, and then it should be, but remember that it's a life lived. Right? So even like the authentic life, the right life, it still is going to change, right? How you define it, what it means to you will change over time, because you will change, right? You're living. Yeah. You're a living being. I mean, we're all in this becoming thing, right? This process. So things will change, and you'll change with it, and hopefully in the right way. So I think that's a nice way to put it too. As long as you're working towards it, it might be a couple iterations, but you'll feel like you're in that right path again.
Yeah. And I think one of the signs of being on the right path is just that life feels good. Like, it feels like it's working out. It feels like the universe is supporting you. You're enjoying it. And generally that tends to happen, at least for me, when I'm doing those things that are right for me.
Right, that you care about, right?
Yeah. Because everybody gets stuck. Like, here's a thing that I get stuck in so often. Like, there's this illusion in my mind that life is going to start sometime in the future when I get this thing done.
Oh, God, right?
Like, my life will finally start once I pay off my student debt. Or my life will finally start when I do this or when I do that. And it's just like, nah, life starts right now.
Life is now. Yeah, I mean, you're living it, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point, though, too. And like you said, right, you said learning to say yes, that sort of positivity and commitment to it, taking ownership of it. I think also learning to say no, too, to what's not right for you. Mm-hmm. I think that's important, learning to recognize the power of your choice, the power of your thoughts that they have over you, how that can be a block, or how it can either work in your favor or against it. And I understand, like, what you said about people who like the victimization, like that idea that, I can't do something or it's impossible for me. I do get it, though, because, there's so many things you can point to explain your situation external to you, right? Like, I can look at my life and I can say, my student loans are crippling me, right? I can't do all the things that I want to do, or, the job market in the area that I was in fell apart, so now I can't do that. But it's like, okay, so those external realities exist, but what can I do to make my life the right life for me?
Yeah, and I think we've spoken about this, how it would be awesome to be able to live a life where we could just do creative things, like talk like we're doing, and be rewarded financially for it.
Hell yeah.
And 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it may have been more difficult to do it, but now it's totally possible. And the thing is, the only thing holding anyone back is just their own beliefs. Because I doubt when Joe Rogan started his podcast, he knew he was going to have 30 million subscribers.
Yeah, no, I highly doubt that.
I doubt when Tim Ferriss wrote his book, The 4 Hour Work Week, he knew he was going to be like a legend.
It would blow up. Yeah.
But it's just, you put yourself out there, you do the work, you take a chance on living the life that you actually want to live, and 9 times out of 10 it may not work, or maybe 99 times out of 100 it may not work, but you only need one home run.
Exactly, right? You only need one time to work. And the fact is every one of those other times will be a learning experience. It'll also prove to you that you can do something that you thought you couldn't. And the reality is if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. I mean, that's the other important thing that I think we forget all the time, right? That we convince ourselves, right, that we can't do something or that we can't change things. And really it's like a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of what my life would be like, because I know what my life is now, even if it sucks. Right? Yeah. And that idea, that comfort, it's a sad thing, but it's true. Like, we get stuck in that. And we're afraid of, well, what if it means I have to change where I live or change this or that? And it's like, well, that's great though, isn't it? Because that's what you ultimately want.
Isn't it funny? We're willing to take 100% certainty of failure as opposed to like taking a chance on success.
Yeah, right? And it's funny because I've heard some people say, well, like if I don't try, I won't fail. It's like, but you did fail because you didn't try, right? If it's something you really wanted to do, and I think your point's great. Right now, I mean, with technology and stuff, it's almost like, creativity is almost in like it's like in an interesting, like, I don't know if you would call it like a golden age or something, where like in the past, like there was always creative people, right? Great artists and stuff, but it was the few who were able to actually do it.
Oh, dude, let's look back 50 years ago. If we wanted to make this podcast.
Oh my God, in the 80s?
Is it?
Wait, no.
I was thinking the 1950s, but yeah, that is 50 years ago. Holy crap.
Actually, that's
70s.
only 40. Yeah,
70s. Yeah. I mean, how would we make this on 8-track?
It's always 2000.
Yeah. But could you imagine? We would have to be in some recording facility. We would have to get this produced on an 8-track player so that people could plug it into their cars and get it distributed.
Not only that, it was all analog. So you would have to have a pretty good understanding of audio, of how to produce things, of how to make it so that the quality was, because the quality of those recordings were not that great. You'd have to really produce it to make it sound good. Whereas right now, man, with our cell phones and stuff, I mean, you can make a high quality recording very easily. Like, I think we forget that often, that, really there's so many opportunities right now because it's so easy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, isn't it? That was only freaking the 70s, was 50 years ago. That's crazy.
Jeez. Whew. See, I used to love listening to the oldies when it played music from the 50s.
Yeah.
But now the oldies plays like music from the 90s.
Yeah.
2000s.
Well, I always think that is a funny thing to think about, right? Like, as we age, and we get older, eventually, we'll be elderly, and like classic music is going to be like in
Justin
sync.
Bieber.
Yeah. I mean, really though, it's going to happen, right? Because at some point, it catches up, and that time has passed.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time does fly, though. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I guess for some people out there who may not be on the right path, or they may not feel like they're on the right path, how do you get started getting on the right path?
I mean, I think that is the question, right? And I think, looking at this very practically, not like, high theory, but practical, I think, for me at least, I think there is value in really like trying to give yourself time to self-reflect, to ask yourself important questions. Like, for instance, like I always have used journaling as a means to kind of work through problems, figure out what I need, so forth and so on. And that's a good method, just to give yourself a little bit of time each day, even if it's 30 minutes in the morning or at night, to actually think about, what do I want? What kind of life do I imagine for myself? And here I'm not talking about, I want $1 billion, because that's immaterial. I'm talking about, what kind of life would I find meaningful?
But you know what? I would almost argue, if that is your goal right now, wanting $1 million, I say go for it.
Oh no, don't.
And then get that $1 million and realize how disillusioning it is.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like there's this whole thing about how we're supposed to like shun money and shun popularity and all these things because it's like that's not the right way. But it's like maybe that is the right way, because it took me until I got to the point of getting everything that I thought was success to realize that that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah, it's still empty, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I think that one of the problems we face right now is that we've gotten to a point where everything is kind of like, the value of everything is determined by financial value. And I find that's really problematic.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think this method that I'm talking about, trying to figure out really what you want and imagining it for yourself on paper, I find that useful for me because I think you'll get to the core of what you should be doing essentially. Like I realized for me, like one of the things was like when I looked at my life and I looked at what I was teaching and all, and I still am, but one of the things I realized that I really love is talking. I love creating. I mean, I love, like, you know, thinking about things and working through problems. And I really love writing. So I realized that, you know, I need to start doing that stuff. However I do it, I need to start doing that. And I think, like you said, right, just focusing on the money, just focusing on, like, I want $1 million. Well, okay, you could do that any number of ways. And the problem with that is if that's your only goal, how you get there, I mean, that's the important thing, though, right, in life, is how you actually do it. And you're focusing on the end rather than the actual process. And rather than finding value in the process, you're only looking as the end is valuable. And I think that's the issue, right?
Yeah, I've heard it said by Naval Ravikant, and I think he was quoting some of the older philosophers where they were talking about being philosopher kings.
And that was Plato's Republic, talks about the philosopher king.
And they said, become a king first, and then a philosopher. And he said something along those lines of, yes, if you want to be rich and wise, become rich first, because that's easier. And then it'll give you the time to become wise. Because he argues that in 10 years, anyone can become rich. And
I think that's probably true, right? If you really put your mind to it, and you really said, F it to all my fears, my worries, my inhibitions, and just ran with it, you could, right? Because you could figure something out.
Yeah.
But, you know, the problem with that is, you know, that means you're going to be willing to do anything. You're going to take on anything. You're going to really, your morals won't matter at all because they're going to get in the way. And, you know, when we talk about...
I wouldn't say it. I think that you could do it even in a very moralistic way. Because, well, let's just look at it for instance. Let's say if average salary in the U.S. is like $50,000. Well, what happens if you had $50,000 in the bank? You'd probably be pretty... your time would be at least a little bit more free.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, easy way to do that. You're making $50,000 now. Just save 10% of it every year.
Yeah.
After 10 years, you have $50,000 in the bank. All of a sudden, your time's a bit more free.
And you can do something with that money to make more money. Yeah.
Or you can take the time off that you want. Because it's not really the $1 million that everybody wants. It's the lifestyle that $1 million will buy you.
Well, it is, right? And I think that's the thing. Like, and they have these ideas, and I think, but that's, I guess, what I'm talking about too. When you thinking about really what you want. Also, because we have these ideas of, like, I want to be wealthy and stuff. But what is it about that you want? Is it the lifestyle? Is it what you see online, like partying and jet setting and flying around the world? I mean, what is it, and how can you kind of, what does that say about you, I guess? Like, when you look at the things that you really want, what's at the core of them? And what does that tell you about the life you should be living, right? What does it indicate to you about things you should do in order to make your life valuable and worthwhile?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's tough, but I think sometimes, too, you know, we have to look at, like, things like, you know, our relationships, our obligations. We have to look at, you know, those pressures that are exerted upon us and ask ourselves, are these right for me? Is this healthy? Is it helping me, or is it hindering me? You know, and how can I live better, you know, with these in my life? Should I get rid of some of them, some of my relationships? Should I change them? Should I, you know, I mean, there's so many questions to ask, right? And I think that's what makes it hard and challenging too. But, you know, I think a good place to start for me, at least, I guess, would be, you know, trying to figure out, what you want. And also looking at yourself and asking that question of, you know, what defines me? How do I define myself? Do I define myself by myself, or do I rely on externals to define me? Am I allowing other people, the world, what have you, to define who I am and my place? Yeah. Or am I making that place myself? Because I think that's where you get into the victimization thing too, right? Am I blaming others for my situation, or am I taking ownership of it and making myself into something?
Yeah.
What about you? What would you say?
How to get on the right track?
Yeah.
I would say that you really have to just find out what it is for you. I mean, there's no right track. There's only the right track for you.
You know, I always loved, like, you know, in Thus Speaks Zarathustra, they ask Zarathustra, what's the path, you know? And he laughs and he says, you know, this is my path. I don't know about yours. He's like, because the path, that doesn't exist, right? One path, if one path existed, it'd all be easy. we'd all take that road and boom, life would be great. But it doesn't exist because we're all different, right? I mean, that's the thing. That's what makes humanity kind of interesting and full of possibility.
Yeah. And then once you find out what's true for you, or at least what's closest to being true for you, just having the balls to go for it. There's so many people who know the right thing to do, or they know what they want, but they're just too afraid to go for it.
To try it.
Yeah. Because what happens if it fails? And one of the best exercises that I did a while ago was just take a look at the absolute worst case scenario for my life. Like, what's the absolute worst possible things? If all of my fears happened, what would that look like? And could I recover from that?
That's an interesting exercise too. I think we mentioned this before, right?
Yeah.
The idea that, and realizing that you could still get through that. You could still get over it, right?
Yeah. And actually, I laughed about it because, part of my fear was like going to prison. And then I looked at it and I was like, are you kidding? 3 square meals a day? Not having to go to work, just having time to sit, reflect, learn, do whatever. I was like, this is kind of a fantasy.
It would still be bad in many ways, but you could still make it through, right? You can get through we are resilient. That's the thing. We can be if we let ourselves. And I think, your point too, right? Sometimes figuring it out also means just trying things. And, it's interesting, you mentioned, what's the worst case scenario? And the funny thing is, I think a lot of times we forget that when it's trying something out for ourselves, creating something, whatever, usually taking the chance, the worst case scenario is that it fails or you realize you don't like it. And it's like there's almost no consequences with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like nothing bad's going to happen. Your life's not going to change significantly, but you learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And, you learn something about yourself, and this is what's crucial, right? It's self-knowledge. The Oracle at Delphi, right? It had inscribed on it, know thyself. As the most important kind of wisdom.
See, and this is my biggest argument against the modern education system.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Greeks.
And this is why because basically, for the first 18 years of our lives, we're indoctrinated to never make a mistake. We're taught that mistakes are wrong. You're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to follow instructions, do what everybody else is doing, listen to authority, never try anything, and just conform.
Yeah.
And it sets us up for a really depressing life.
It really does. And it's funny, you mentioned that, like, you look at how we educate and, how we raise it is indoctrination. It's socialization. It's made to make people similar, controllable, right? So that we can expect the same thing from everyone, so that we can keep society a certain way. And really, it's very damaging. And, you carry all this crap with you your whole life, unfortunately. And sometimes just recognizing it will help you get past it. I mean, I know myself, right? I struggled a lot. And I finally broke through it. But with this perfectionism, like this idea that what I had to do had to be perfect that time, right away. And I realized a lot of it had to do with education, because I was so used to, from going to school for so long, submitting these papers, right? And everybody expecting that I'd get an A or an A+ on everything. And, when you have that in your mind, it kind of really destroys your ability to be creative, to take chances, because you have this expectation and you'll end up working on the same thing over and over, and all you're doing is stalling. You're keeping yourself back, right?
It's a type of perfectionism, because with the perfectionism, everything's very binary. Mm-hmm. Either it's an A or 100%, or it's a failure.
Yep. Yeah.
Where instead, an 82% is still phenomenal.
Yeah.
Even a 60 is still above average.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that too, right? Because that's just it. Like, the way I would look at things was like, if it wasn't not only just in the A range, but if it wasn't really like a 94 to 100, I failed. And that's, when you think about it, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, everything I was doing, I was learning something about myself. I was learning, skills and developing. And so right there, that has value, irrespective of the stupid grade. Not to mention, too, the grade's determined by an individual. So when you really think about it, it's pretty subjective in a lot of ways. I know for a fact, actually, because I grade. Like, there are subjective factors to it. It's not wholly objective. It can't be.
Yeah.
Unless you're taking just a test that's on a Scantron, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah. Even so, I mean, like the standardized testing. I could just go on a whole rant for days about how the education
Oh, we
system's
can. I mean,
all messed
obviously,
up.
yeah. I mean, I
But
think.
like, the standardized testing is creating the dumbest society that's ever existed.
Oh yeah, and you
Because
know,
we're teaching for this stupid test that doesn't prepare you for anything for life, and yet that's what your whole life is supposed to depend on.
oh no, isn't it funny? I always think about that. You know, they could be teaching. Let's see. These kids in high school, where 70% of them are enrolling in college right after high school, they could teach them, I don't know, some financial courses, so they understand, you know, what interest rates are, how they'll apply over long term with their student loans.
Yeah.
You know, we could teach kids a lot of practical things. You know, we could teach them critical thinking so they can think about their life and what they want.
Yeah.
But instead, we want them to go through this sort of mold of what a good life is.
Yeah, this STEM education is so important.
God.
Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, so important. And I mean, I remember when they were removing gym classes and art classes and music classes from school. I was like, this is crazy. And why? What is that going to do for the universe?
Well, you know, it's interesting, too, because you talk about all those STEM courses, too. A lot of them, too, it's just memorization of stuff that you will look up when you actually work in the field.
Yeah.
You don't know everything from, give me a break. No one does.
Yep.
I mean, you look up doses of medication. You look up, you know, specific information related to something because you want to make sure that it's right, and you don't need to keep it all in your head. It's a waste of space.
Yeah, so now that we're off topic again,
We are always.
on the off topic podcast.
The digression podcast. Give me a topic, and I will digress in 20 minutes or more.
So, you found an article on how to find your right path, did you not?
I did.
Should we go through that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Because I found one on signs that you're on your right path. So first we could go through the how to get to your right path, and then we could find out signs you're on the right path, and then we might have a way to go.
All right.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, it's definitely getting into the right current that's going to take you where you want to go. Because if you find... What am I trying to say here? If you get in the path of progress and then just let it push you to where you want to go, that's the easiest way to get there. Then it seems almost effortless.
Well, I think that I like using the idea of the stream is really good, the current, because I think, you know, when you really think of it, right, a lot of times when we act in life, you know, and we feel resistance, it's coming from us, right? It's a recognition by ourselves, essentially, that this isn't right, this isn't correct. And ideally, I think you see this in a lot of the philosophies. Like I said, Nietzsche, Taoism, I think if you're living in the right way that's right for you, it will, in a sense, feel effortless. You will be with the current, right? You'll be using the world around you actually as sort of a booster to your own progress, to your own development, and I think that makes sense, right? If I'm doing what's right for me, in a way it feels good, because even when it's hard, even when it requires work, it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's positive, I value it.
You're so immersed in it, you don't even have time to question it.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's funny, I think about it sometimes, too, you know, like that idea, like, when time flies because you're so engaged in something and enjoying it so much, like, that's a great indicator. When, like, when I look up, when I'm doing work and I look up and I'm like, oh my God, 3 hours passed? It felt like 10 minutes, you know?
Yep.
That is such a good sign that I love what I'm doing, because I was just so lost in it. And, like, I think that's, you know, we don't often think about that, but, you know, I mean, I've been at work sometimes and I look at the clock and it feels like a second takes an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, when you're with that current, life will feel good, like you said.
Yeah. And I think we also have this opportunity now to where our work can become those things that make time fly for us.
How so?
Well, because of the ability to self-publish. I mean, that's basically it. You can market to the world nowadays. You can basically sell whatever you have anywhere in the world 24/7.
You can do whatever you want now, yeah. It's much easier.
Yeah, the leverage that you have via the internet, and also the scaling factors you have via the internet, it just makes it to where it's almost like we're returning to the time of the artisan.
Yeah.
You remember, like, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, how they had these artisans who would they would do one thing, but they would be really good at it.
They'd kick ass at it.
Yeah.
They made good bread.
Yeah. And you can start to do that again, and people will pay you because you do what you do very well.
Well, you know what I think, too? We are, you know, human beings are creative beings. You know, there is all of us experience a joy in creation, especially when you find the right type of creation. And you're right, we talk a lot about self-publishing and stuff, but with Etsy and stuff, I mean, there's always ways to, like, if you have a product you want to make, there's always ways to get started. And to get started for very limited funds, and to really get started doing what you love, and then who knows where it'll go from there. But in the whole time you'll learn things, you'll figure things out, and you go with it. That's basically it.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, and not to at least acknowledge when you're doubting yourself and to get over yourself. Because, like, everyone looks at these successes and they think, oh, I can't do that. Well, like, you've probably heard of, like, Marie Callender pies. You know how she started? With one pie. She was working at this Greasy Spoon diner. They were going out of business. She said to the owner, she's like, can I bring in my pies, try and sell my pies? He said, yeah, sure, whatever. She brought in the pies that day, sold one slice, another slice, another slice. By the end of the day, the whole pie was sold. The next day, she brought in 2 pies, sold both of those pies. After a while, people were asking if they could buy a whole pie for themselves. Now she's got hundreds of restaurants. She's in every frozen section of every supermarket.
Yeah.
And it all started from one pie.
Well, that's just it, right? It all starts from one thing. And, it's funny, but I think for each individual, the thing preventing you most from doing that one thing is you. It always is you. Because the reality is, I mean, most of the time, you can find the time to do it if you really want to do it. It is not impossible.
Most of the time just comes from not watching as much TV.
Right, yeah. Realizing that, look, we're all guilty of this. I know when I was struggling a lot in my life, when I really looked at it, I realized how much time I was wasting just distracting myself so I didn't have to think about things. But all I was doing was prolonging my suffering and making it worse because I wasn't confronting it, wasn't dealing with it, and wasn't admitting to myself, like, the changes that needed to be made, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of our biggest obstacle is us, right?
Yeah. And I would say it's almost overcoming addictions nowadays. Like, these are addictions that aren't technically classified as addictions yet.
Good word.
But, yeah. But, like, the Netflix addiction, the Facebook addiction, the Instagram addiction. Like, you have them.
Oh, yeah.
You can't stop.
Well, it's funny, too? Just the Netflix addiction, right? Like, the idea that TV is binged watched. Like, you used to watch one episode a week and wait.
Yeah.
Or maybe you bought the DVDs and you watched a couple, but now it's like you watch the entire...
What are you going to binge next?
Yeah, like, what are you going to binge next? So I'm going to sit down for 16 hours and watch this entire fucking season.
Wow.
And it's like, when you think about that, it's insane. But, and don't get me wrong, I've done it before and it's fun sometimes, but to only do that is just such a waste. Like, why?
Yeah.
And if you really are unhappy, think about what you're distracting your life with. Think about what you're using to deny really yourself, right?
Yeah.
To escape.
Yeah. You mentioned this earlier, how these are like passive activities, and it's almost a waste of your life energy because while they may be enjoyable and they're great to do every once in a while, if you're doing this every day, look at the time piling up. I mean, if you're doing it 2 hours a day, that's 700 hours per year. I can't even count how many days, 35 days, something like that.
It's a lot of days.
That's a lot of days out of the year. That's basically a whole month, 1 out of 12 months.
You're just watching it.
You're just watching TV.
Yeah. And that's not even like a necessity like sleep or something, right?
Yeah.
It's just something you're choosing to do. And look, and I mean, we're not saying that it's always wrong to do these things, but just to keep in mind that if you're doing it all the time, are you really just distracting yourself, hiding from yourself, essentially?
And what are you hiding from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I do think, kind of on a fundamental level, the greatest fulfillment in life comes from overcoming your most challenging obstacles.
Absolutely, right? Nietzsche talks about self-overcoming, right? This idea of overcoming essentially those blocks, those obstacles, those things in our path that are preventing us, right? From being ourselves, from being our higher self.
And even if it's something that stopped you for years and years and years, you still have the chance now to turn and face it. As long as there's still breath in your lungs, you can still decide to turn and face it and stand up to that thing that you've been afraid of your whole entire life.
It's amazing, right? But like, look, addiction, today's always the day that you could stop. An abusive relationship, today's always the day that you could get out of it, right? You can always change something and then the rest of your life is yours, right? I mean, it's all possibility. I think we forget that. We convince ourselves that the situation is what it is and that we have no power. But all we're doing is we're forfeiting our power. We have power. We can say yes and no. We have the power to interpret our experiences, and we have the power to make choices. That is fundamentally what's in our control. To live our own life because no one else will or can.
Yeah. There's this, I laugh about this thing the first time I read it, and I don't remember where it was from, but they were talking about like learning an instrument at an older time in life. Like right now I'm 37, I think. And
wait, you're 37?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's like if I were to pick up an instrument like guitar and I really wanted to learn to shred, it would take 10, 15 years to be really good at that. It's like, well, when I'm 47 or 52, I'm going to be too old to shred a guitar by then. And it's like, well, you're going to be that old anyways, so
yeah.
you might as well start now.
Hate to tell you, that shit's going to happen. No, it's funny, right? That's the idea, that's that expectation. Like, that one, I shouldn't do anything if it's not going to be profitable right now. Two, which is kind of funny because, right, like, what about just enjoying it for doing it? We forget that, right? Yeah. And then, okay, do you want to add something?
Well, you mentioned this earlier about how most Americans don't have hobbies anymore.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I had read this study a while ago, but they had said that most adult Americans have no hobbies because basically they view hobbies as a waste, right? I'm not making any financial gain from it, and they think that just because of that, it's not adding to my life. When in fact, hobbies have been shown to make your life better, right? Because you're doing things you enjoy just for the sake of doing it. And so it doesn't matter if you're good. It doesn't matter if you're the best, right? You're just doing it because you love it. Like, it's funny. Like, I still break out my rollerblades once in a while and go because I enjoy it. I'm not great. I'm not like especially gifted at it, but I do enjoy it and it's fun. Why not do it, right? Because life is about that sometimes. It's about doing things that we just enjoy. Yeah. And I think that was a great article, and I read it because when you really look at your life, do you have any hobbies? Because hobbies can be a great way to also figure out where you should be going, right? Which direction you should go in. Because you're doing those things just for the sheer joy of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's a great starting place.
And also, like, this whole pursuit of money and success and fame, but particularly money. Like, all that money really does is it solves your money problems and it gives you more time. So if you have more time, what are you going to do?
Yeah, right.
and whatever that is, why don't you just do it now? Like,
start now, yeah.
Why wait until you have $1 million to start doing that? Why not just do it now?
There's always a way to start, and I think, starting to develop hobbies is a great practice, though, because I think, you will discover things about yourself, you'll learn things, and that will help you figure out where to go. I mean, it's interesting. You're right, too, right? Money will give you more time. And I get it, dude. I really get the money thing because, like, look, we all want more money because it will make the stresses in life easier to bear, the financial stresses, right? And there is truth in that, absolutely. But beyond that, I mean, it's not going to instantly make your life happy or better. It will make it more bearable. It will give you more free time, but you still have to find out how to make your life valuable, right?
And also, every blessing has a burden. Like, we don't see the burden that comes with having money. And the burdens may be friends and relatives asking you for money, guilting you into giving them money.
Well, look at lottery winners all the time, right? They end up going bankrupt or having all these issues.
They end up being more miserable afterwards.
Yeah, because everybody they knew in high school and middle school comes asking for money, right?
Yeah. And then not knowing if you have true friends. Like, look at Bieber. I mean, he had money before he even knew how to wipe his own ass.
Oh yeah, he was young. I mean, you're right though. He was a kid. Those child stars, they have issues because if you have all this wealth when you're 10, 12, 13, by the time you're actually an adult and trying to make friendships, how the hell do you know who to hang her on, right?
Look at Macaulay Culkin, okay?
Oh,
Home
God,
Alone, child star, and then as a child, he's hanging out with, like, Michael Jackson, who's, like, the most known person in the world. That's
at the
his
time,
friend.
yeah, absolutely.
And then how do you even relate to people after that? Like,
yeah. I mean, everybody looks at you, too, as this icon or celebrity. They don't see you as a real person.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even know the real person because they know you through these things that aren't really, they are you, but they're not you, right? Like, they're not the real you wholly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So, count your blessings now.
Yeah, it's a good point. And just, I don't know, I think starting things, too, trying them is always so important.
But also not having money is somewhat of a blessing. And I think I've referenced this before, but there was this game that I used to play called Borderlands. And it was a super fun game to play with my friends. But then one day we played it for months. And we would just have so much fun playing it every night. And then one night we were playing and somebody gave us millions of dollars of the currency in the game. Maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars. And all of a sudden we could do anything we wanted in the game, and it lost its fun. We stopped playing it 2 days later.
Well, that's funny, right? Because video games are based on small goals. And that's what keeps you going back, right? Because that's what makes it fun. You do these things, you get a small reward, you get a little bit of upgrade, you do something else, right? But when you get all this money at the outset, it's like, okay, well, now I don't have to do anything because it kind of takes away the whole point. And I think that's a great example. I mean, it works well.
Yeah.
Should we go? You want to go through this list?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Let's.
The Digression
7
Podcast.
steps for getting your life on the right path.
Yeah, now we've already talked about some of these, but we'll mention all of them anyway, and I'll post the link to this as well on the show notes. 7 steps for getting your life on the right path. The first one, be honest about what it is that you really want.
Oh, yeah. This is perfect. So, like we were mentioning earlier, if you really want $1 million, or if you want to just get, BJs from a whole bunch of, whatever you want. Whatever it is, just being honest about it, because I think there's so much guilt around certain things that people are afraid to admit that that's what they want.
Well, there is. Oh, there's lots. It's funny. Like we all these conceptions and ideas about these pursuits, these things, right? That get in the way also. And most of them are unfounded, right? They come from society, come from family. I mean, the fact is you have to be honest with yourself. And honesty is not always easy, by no stretch. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's easy.
But a lot of people get into trouble just by not being honest about what they truly want, by falling into society's norms and whatever, because then they can blame their unhappiness on society. Well, I was supposed to do this. I didn't have a choice. Blah, 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 blah.
No, I think that's true, right? We use blame as a way to sort of free ourselves from the burden of from the burden of having to do anything, right? But it also, all we're doing is guaranteeing ourselves unhappiness. When you really look at it, blaming things outside yourself, not taking responsibility is the worst thing you can do. Because all you're doing is you're accepting a situation that you're unhappy with. I mean, and when you really think about it, it's crazy, but we all do it because we don't want to, we want an excuse. We want to free ourselves. We want to pretend like we're freeing ourselves.
It's easier than putting in the work.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's like an instantaneous payoff as opposed to the delayed gratification of actually doing the hard work.
Exactly. And it is too, right? It's like, well, why am I not doing this right now instead of just or why am I just watching Netflix instead of doing this thing? Oh, because I can't, because such and such is the case, right? So you allow yourself that and you get this instant payoff, but you're prolonging your suffering.
Yeah. And one thing that I've found is very helpful in actually doing the thing that I want to do is just taking small steps every day. Because drop by drop, the bucket gets filled. And it's just doing a little bit, right now, there are a couple things that I do every day. And just by doing that every day, I know in 10 years, in 20 years, in 40 years, I will be phenomenal at it. And
like masturbation.
Exactly.
He does it every day.
I'm getting really, really good at it.
So good.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, though, because, you're right. We often look at these things that we want to do, and we look at the end goal, right? The $1 million, or blowing up on the internet with something, or the
shredding a guitar, being an amazing computer programmer, whatever it is.
And we forget that all of these things are realized from a ton of little steps. And when you you can break down any goal into small parts that are absolutely achievable and doable. You really can. I mean, look, like shredding on a guitar, right? 30 minutes a day.
Dude, I don't even do that.
Yeah.
I just make sure I pick up the guitar every day.
No, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
I just make sure that I watch at least one video on learning computer programming a day. I just make sure that I make one YouTube video per day.
One thing.
Yeah, that's it. Like this, what's the simplest thing that I could possibly do in that direction? And then make sure I do that every day.
I'm glad. What's funny? There was a great thing I heard about exercising, right? And the person, I forget who it was, but they said, look, put on your workout clothes every day and get out your mat. Just do those two things. Even if you just sit on your mat, just do that. Because the fact is, once you put on your clothes and you get out the mat, you're like, well, I guess I already have it out. I'll do something. And even if you do 10 minutes, you did it. At least you did something. It's always better to do than not do. I think that's the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Stephen Guise has a book. He has a book on imperfection, the art of how to be an imperfectionist, I think one of them's called. And that may be the book where it came from, but he's talking about just doing one push-up a day.
Yeah, right.
And just setting these very minimal, simple goals that you can accomplish.
Well, and there's a reason, right? Because if you set the goal where it's achievable, you won't get disheartened. And you'll realize that you get it done so easily that you'll just do more.
Yeah, you're always at liberty to do more.
Exactly.
But just instead of setting the minimum for like an hour a day, because then even if you get 5 minutes into it and you're exhausted and you quit, you feel like a reject.
You feel like a loser, right?
Yeah, you couldn't do
like you failed.
Yeah, exactly. But if you set the bar so low that it just gets you started, because really with most things, once you put 5 minutes into it, you start getting into it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you really do like it, you will get into it. You know, it's funny with writing. I had read all these things, like people, authors saying, oh, I write 2,000 words a day, blah, 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 every day. And I was trying to use these as a guide, and I was struggling. And then I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to do a sentence, 1 sentence a day. And the funny thing is, that worked way better because it was so easy to accomplish. I would do it, and not even a good sentence always, right? But I'd do it in, a minute. And then I'd be like, might as well write a little more. And before you know it, I was writing probably more than 2,000 words a day and enjoying it. Mm-hmm. Because, it's this idea of setting these goals where we're going to fail is just ridiculous. Because we're setting ourselves up for failure and being upset. And sometimes I think we do it on purpose when we're being honest with ourselves, right? We do it to make ourselves feel okay about not accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish. Mm. And I think, setting achievable goals is so fucking important. It really is important. It is. Everything can be broken down into small goals.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Off topic.
Damn right. Well, no, that takes honesty. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anyway, number 2, commit to getting or staying healthy. And I get this in the sense that, look, our physical health and our emotional health are both very important, right, to anything. And we're going to struggle to accomplish any goals if we don't feel good. If we're sick or, we're struggling emotionally with something. I mean, there is truth to that. We need to get through we need to really be honest with ourselves and get through our own emotional baggage and our own physical burdens in order to really excel. I think that's probably true, right? You know?
Yeah, and I mean, your body is just like an astrolabe for your life. I don't know if that's the correct word, but
I don't even know if that is a word.
Making up words. Just call me Shakespeare. I'll just create
it's your Smith.
But your body kind of corresponds to what's going on in your life, and also if you're not sick, if you're not well, you're not gonna want to get stuff done.
That's true, right? I mean, it's always going to be an obstacle. So that makes sense. All right, let's see. Get passionate about something. And I think this is absolutely, we were talking about hobbies and stuff, right? Finding something that you really can get involved in, that you love doing, that you like, you find, I mean, look, this is all about finding something meaningful, finding something that's meaningful for you to engage in and do and makes life better, right?
Yeah, and this is something that oftentimes I struggle with in down moments, finding something to be passionate about.
Oh, it's hard sometimes. It is.
And like I mentioned earlier, for me, it comes in iterations because I have to play a mind game with myself. I'm like, well, if I could be passionate about something, what would it be? If I could just be like a little bit into something, what would that be? And then I start doing that, and then I find the next thing, and
that's a good way to look at it, right? So instead of saying the bar so high, it's like, what am I going to be like totally thrilled about?
Everybody's looking for this thing they have a raging hard on for, and it just
back to the masturbation thing again. No,
an expert, and it just oftentimes it's just not clearly visible. But all you have to do is get a little bit closer, and then it'll become visible.
Well, no, I think that's true, and that's a good way to say it, right? Look, what we're passionate about is not going to always be immediately clear. We'll have indications, right? Hints.
Yeah.
Things that we feel like we need to do, or things that just for whatever reason interest us, we can't explain why. I mean, there'll be hints, but you have to start doing it to really know, right? If it's going to be something you can really be passionate about sometimes. And you have to try things. I think that's the other important thing, right? Experiment, try things. Because you won't know until you do things. I mean, that's the other important thing.
Yeah, throw a lot of shit against the wall, see what sticks.
Yep. Anything else you want to say about that?
Well, there's this book. I am not a fan of the passion hypothesis. No. I think it's misdirected. I think it can be helpful, certainly, but I think it's completely misdirected because passion is fading. Okay? And it's like it's a whim. It's a lust. It comes, it goes, it disappears. There's this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, where he basically talks about how it's like a complete fallacy. And it didn't really come about until that book, What Color Is Your Parachute, came out. That people started talking about passion. They talked about dreams, they talked about gifts, but nobody talked about passion because they knew passion was fleeting. And nowadays there's this whole thing about pursue your passion, find your passion, you've got to do your passion, your job should be your passion should be your life, everything should be your passion, be passionate, and it's just
Your
like...
passion should have a passion.
And people are like, they pursue their passion and they realize it's empty as all can be. And
well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I one of the ways I tend to think about passion is it's really influenced by like actually a lot of the philosophers I read. So Kierkegaard mentions like your passion being your subjective truth. What makes life meaningful? And so like when I think about it, that's why I keep referring to meaning, right? And making your life meaningful is like, when I think of passion, I don't think of necessarily like I understand what you're saying, right? Because a lot of people think of it that way. You know, I think that I'm so into and stuff, but that is fleeting. It will come and go.
Yeah.
But, you know, finding meaning in things, right? Finding what's meaningful for you that makes life meaningful. That's how I look at it.
What I'm still looking at for myself, trying to discover, but what I think could be really, really monumental is finding my gift. And your gift is what you can do better than anybody else with the least amount of effort. Because that's the thing you were placed here on this universe to do. The thing that you can do better than everybody else with the least amount of effort. And once you can find that, oof.
Well, I think that makes sense, right? Because our talents, our gifts, our natural abilities will absolutely help us determine what we want to do, because it'll make those things more enjoyable, because we will already have sort of a leg up, right?
It'll be enjoyable because we're really good at it.
Yeah, and being good at stuff is awesome, because then I can look at everybody else and be like, you suck.
Yeah, but it also gives you freedom, because all of a sudden you're able to do it with such ease and effortlessness. And
no, it's true though, right? Because anybody can do something, but it doesn't mean they're going to be able to do it in the same amount of time. It doesn't mean it's going to come as easy, right? And it's true. Some of us do just have inclinations toward things. We're better at certain things, and those things will make our lives a lot easier if we do them, because it'll just be done quicker, right? We have more free time. We have more time to work on, say, editing things, whatever, right? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so the next one is interesting, and I think this is also important, right? Help others. And I like this one just because, you know, we are talking about a lot of things. We're focusing on ourselves a lot, right? On our own life, finding a meaningful life, authentic life, whatever. It's much about the individual. But we do live in a world with others, always, right? And I think helping others, there is value in that, and it feels good. And it is important because, you know, we also don't want to live in a world that's terrible either, I think, at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it. There's kind of like two ways to look at that. So there's, you know, in learning, there's like the see one, do one, teach one mentality, where you see it done by somebody else, then you do it yourself, then you teach it to someone else, and that's a really great way to implement it. And that teach one is...
Aristotle said you don't know something until you can teach it to others.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah.
And then...
And Aristotle said, you know, it's fucking right.
Oh, gotta be, yeah. And then the other thing is... what is it? Something along the lines of no one's enlightened until everybody's enlightened.
Oh.
And the idea that, you know, you're really not living your ideal life until everybody's living their ideal life. Because otherwise you're doing it at the expense of other people.
Well, that's just it, right? If getting what you want and you look around and you haven't really improved the world at all, it's like it is kind of empty, right? In a way, because we are here with others, like. You know, and it feels good to help other people. It does.
And also it's just an illusion that it is another.
Yeah, exactly, that too.
I mean, we're all just stardust from the same...
we are.
Whatever, speck of cosmic dust.
And that's true. Yeah, we are. And not to mention, too, I think helping others, too, also is important because it makes you realize that everybody's just people, right? You know, you're not looking at them differently and whatever and judging them and stuff, and I think that's important. Mm-hmm. Okay. Helping others.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one, I mean, we've kind of talked about this, and I don't know. It's find your real dream job. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we're probably not talking about passion here, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's finding out what's going to work for us. What are we good at? What do we really want to do?
Yeah. Yeah, like, what would you do, what job would you do if all jobs paid the same?
I like that. That's a great way to look. I love that. Because you talked about that before, right? Mm-hmm. If it didn't matter, right? The money was the same no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, how cool. You could do anything and get paid the same. Like, really, what would you do?
And that's a great way to think about it, right? Because that helps you. And, you know, these questions are great, these thought experiments, because the whole point is really to get you thinking about what you want.
Yeah.
You know, what is it that I really want? Which direction do I want to go in? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Like, would you work in construction? Would you drive one of those big trucks? I always fantasize about being like a trucker, driving a big rig. Like, especially after watching Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, yeah. You have a lot of time on your hands to think, reflect.
Yeah, right?
Meet interesting people.
I know. And just, and even if it's a couple things, what would you do? And then do it. My goodness, you got one chance, just do it.
Well, that's the other important thing I think that we often forget, right? This is like, whatever else your beliefs are, you have this time here and now, this life that you can live. And are you living it? Are you doing what you want? Are you really owning your life? I mean, I know we all struggle with this. I have in my life millions of times. I know you have, right? I mean, and asking yourself that question, honestly, I think will help getting on the right path, right? Am I really living the life that I want? Am I really honest with myself about the fact that this is my life? I have this time. Yeah. All right. Want to do the next one?
Yeah.
All right. The next one's more practical and sensible. Get your finances together, right? Because we talked about this a ton of times, right? With the money thing, the stress that comes with finances.
I don't think we talk about it enough, actually. I think we should do a whole episode on it.
We really should, actually. Probably be good, because it is. I mean, everybody is struggling with this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, getting our finances together is helpful. Like you said, you have the budget. I mean, that's smart. I think budgeting is fantastic. It's a good way where you don't have to stress about what you should or shouldn't spend. You know what you have to spend, and that's it.
Yeah.
And also understand, when you budget too, I think the other important thing is understanding that if I get one thing, I can't get another thing, right? Because I've set a limit, and so I have to give something up rather than running up credit cards and stuff because I want both. And, waiting for things. And appreciating when you get it because you waited, because you're not in debt out of your ears because, when you got it.
We talk so much on this podcast about planning your ideal life. And I really think that when you have your finances right and you budget your money, it's planning your ideal financial life.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because if you're budgeting your money, you're planning for what you really want, too. You're making decisions ahead of time about what you need and what you want in life, and I think you're right. I think that's a great point. We should do a show on it.
Yeah. How your money impacts your life.
So we agree. Getting your finances together is extremely important, and it may take time. Be mindful of that. It may take a long time, actually.
Well, I would recommend, what worked for me was Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, and that's a really, I mean, it's a sound system. I've changed it a little bit for myself because I don't agree with everything he says, but it's a very sound financial system. So if you don't have any idea what you're doing, it's a great place to start.
Too, I like what you just said there, right? Whatever you read, too, recognize that sometimes, don't take anything wholly for what it is,
it's
right?
Not gospel.
Yeah, if you need to make changes, and make it work for you. And I think even the one thing you can implement right now is like Randy's idea of the 2-week budget. I think that's such a great idea because it's short, it's easy to do, it's not long, you're not thinking a year out.
Yep.
And you can change it with your financial situation if things change, if something happens.
Yep.
But it's easy to plan 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not hard.
Yep. And understanding that it takes a couple months until you really get it down. Like the first few months of my budget, every budget was wrong.
Yeah.
But then I really started figuring out what was right. And all I do is I search Dave Ramsey monthly cash flow plan, and I download that, and I just fill in the categories, my actual numbers. And then, since about the second month, I pretty much know what I spend in each category, and I can just copy one to the next. And that's pretty much the same thing that happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, you get in a routine. You don't have to keep doing it, right?
Yeah, like right now for the holidays, I realize I need to allocate a little bit more towards gifts, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
I think that's great too, right? It does take time, but you will learn it, and once you figure it out too, it will be a lot easier. But the nice thing is too, you can plan to save, and you make those decisions ahead of time, so you're not thinking about it in the moment, and it's much easier to live your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right,
we should do an episode on that. Good. Yeah. Okay. We both said it's done. Jinx, double jinx. Anyway. All right, so the last one, 7. And I think this is also really important. I like this list. Learn to enjoy where you are. And this is important. We imagine perfection all the time. We imagine this other place down the road. Like we were just talking about this earlier, right? That once I get this done, I'll be happy or whatever. But we forget that we're alive now. We're living right now. And if we're not focusing on now and enjoying now, we're really missing out because we're sort of putting our mind elsewhere and not living in the present, right?
Yep. Contentment. There's this, I've been listening to this, when I drive home from work, I've been listening to this meditation on Headspace called Driving Home. And in it he says...
Wait, when you're driving home, you listen to Driving Home?
It's a meditation called Driving Home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand.
And in it he says, no matter what your destination, realize that nothing you can do in your mind will get you there any faster.
Huh, I like that.
It's like it's talking about driving home, but it's like an insane philosophical thing for your life in general. No matter what your destination, wherever you're headed in life, no tricks of the mind will get you there any faster.
No, that's a great point, right? Because what the mind's good at is figuring things out, right? We can imagine where we want to be, we can plan for it, but it's not going to magically make it happen, right? We still have to do things. We still have to live our life, and remembering that and enjoying the moment is so important, because if you don't enjoy living now, you're never going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You're going to miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, and once you get that thing, like this happened to me. I thought for sure once I become a veterinarian, then I'm going to be happy, then my life's going to be perfect, then everything's going to be awesome.
And that was like the 10th thing that he thought this for, I know.
Yeah. And then I became a veterinarian, and life was no better. Because you get in this mindset, what if this, then I'll be happy. And then once you get that, it's the same mindset you carry with you.
Yeah, you're not changing anything, and you're not changing anything about yourself that would make you happy, right? That's the problem. And we trick ourselves into thinking this way, and all we do is miss life the whole time. Yes, I think it's a great list. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yep.
Good episode, man.
Yeah, definitely. Great episode.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We'll definitely do an episode on finances. I think that's a good idea. So, guys, like us, share it, what have you, subscribe.
Maybe real fast we could just tell the people what are the signs that you're actually on the right
path.
Yeah,
we should do that,
We'll just do this real fast.
Okay,
we won't comment on it, but these will be things to look out for if you are on the right path.
And we'll upload this, or we'll put this on the show notes too,
Yeah.
so you can look at it.
All right. So 1, things start aligning for you. 2, you don't allow obstacles to stop you. 3, you care less than usual about what other people think.
Oh, I like this list too.
Yeah. 4, you feel motivated, energized, and excited about what you're doing and where you're headed.
Oh, that's a good one.
5, decision-making seems easier when you're on the right path. 6, you lose track of time doing what you're doing. And you spoke about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 7, your overall bad stress levels are low. 8, your health seems to support you. 9, there's no need to compromise your morals or beliefs. Oh, I think that's
nice. I like this. Yeah.
Definitely.
Damn, we should have commented on this too.
I know. And 10, working hard towards your goals may make you tired, but not depleted.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I know when I'm on my right path.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted, and people are like, "You should really rest." And I'm like, "Listen, I'll sleep when I'm dead."
Yeah, you know what's funny too? It's true, right? You don't care about it because you feel good doing it. And then at the end of the day, when you are exhausted, it's like a good exhausted. Mm-hmm. It's not like worn out where you're like emotionally and stressed and shit where you just feel terrible. You feel great, and you like are excited about the next morning. Mm-hmm. Like, it's funny, like the last couple days this week, like I went to bed and I was like, I can't wait to get up at like 6:30 or whatever so I can get going. Like, you just want to get going with the day. It's great.
Yeah. I've heard it said that, when you're tired, maybe it's not so much that you're lacking sleep, but you're lacking those things that really excite and energize you.
Make you want to live, right? The meaning. It's funny. It's so true, too, because, like, when you're depressed and stuff, man, it's hard to get moving. You don't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. But when you're on the right path and you feel good, like, it's fun to live. I mean, that's the important thing. I think that, life becomes better because you enjoy life more. And that's the truth, right? They're connected. We'll have to talk about this more, too, next time, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, Danny, it's been a pleasure this week. Episode 10 in the double digits.
Woo!
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Yep. We did it.
All right. Well, yeah, like, subscribe, whatnot, and we'll be back next week with episode 11.
Yeah, it really does help us to like the videos or
subscribe or whatever.
Really,
yeah, whatever the hell it is.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate whatever it is. Whatever it is you do, however the system works, we like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys later.
All right, later.